everyone. Welcome in to another edition of Inside the 12. Alongside Pete Souza, I'm Madison Hawk. There's only 3 weeks remaining of the college football regular season. That is hard to believe, in Big 12 fans. I know you have December 7th circled on your calendar. But Pete, after a wild Week 11, there's still some question about who those two teams might be playing in Arlington on December 7th.
3 weeks left. At some point, the music's going to stop, and we're going to find out who is able to have a seat in those big chairs at that big game, and we're going to find out pretty soon. Yeah, I mentioned how crazy Week 11 was inside the Big 12. Let's take a look back at the fallout from what was a chaotic week of college football. A 44-yard field goal in the closing seconds helps BYU squeeze out a win in the Holy War over Utah. That was a crazy game, but how about those Kansas Jayhawks? We've mentioned lately they are much better than their record indicates, and, well, the Jayhawks proved that to be true on Saturday, Pete. Yeah, we knew they were a good football team, like you said. They dominated Iowa State, putting up 532 yards of offense. That's now back-to-back losses for the once undefeated Cyclones. And just like that, the conference title game and picture starts to get flipped on its head. Yeah, a lot to break down there. Tough final stretch for the Jayhawks, though, with BYU, Colorado, and Baylor all remaining. As I mentioned, the 2024 Dr. Pepper Big 12 Football Championship game kicks off from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas on December 7th. Purchase your tickets today at SeatGeek.com. Pete, looking now at the conference standings, you're right, we did have a little shakeup near the top last week, but let's start with number 1 BYU and work our way down. BYU still undefeated, 9-0 on the season, 6-0 in the conference, seem to be the clear favorite to play on December 7th in Arlington. The Cougars just keep finding ways to win. Tough first half versus Utah as the Cougs went down 21-10. But the offense came alive in the second half for a thrilling comeback victory in a jam-packed Rice-Eccles Stadium where you really couldn't hear. This gives BYU, a cushion at the top of the standings, and they might need it. Upset-minded Kansas and a very good Arizona State team lie ahead. But the path for the Big 12 title game is looking pretty good for the Cougars right now. As for the number 2 spot, let's focus in on Colorado now. They're 5-1 in the Big 12 after taking care of business Saturday in Lubbock versus Texas Tech. While some teams are struggling to find the momentum down the stretch, it looks like Coach Prime and the Buffaloes are forming a powerhouse there in Boulder. Yeah, and they're doing it on both sides of the ball with a complete effort each week. And this is time for Old Trapper Beef Jerky. What's your beef? My beef this week, for some reason, because we're talking about Coach Prime and the sizzle that comes with Colorado these days, it seems like some prognosticators refuse to acknowledge the fact about how he is a great coach. And great coaches rebuild programs. You land select blue chip stars, and then you build the team around them. And that's not just Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. We're talking about his staff, defensive coordinator Robert Livingston, Pat Shurmur on the offensive side, putting his players in position for success. Colorado's recent improvement on the defense and offensive lines speak to this. Since their narrow loss to Kansas State, that was back in Week 8 at home, remember that? They've outscored their past 3 opponents by an average of 17 points per game. Coach Prime is deserving of the goods, and the way he's doing it is the right way. Yeah, you mentioned that turnaround. So impressive considering the Buffaloes went just 4-8 last season. Now they're in complete control of their own destiny. I think what stands out to me with this Colorado program is Coach Prime has the players in place that he wanted and the players that want to play for him, and they're getting it done right now on both sides of the ball. It's not just sizzle, it's meat and potatoes, and it's not a microwave situation. They have worked very hard for this. I see what you did there. I like that. That said, there are a group of teams with 2 conference losses looking to get back into the title game hunt. As we mentioned, it's anyone's game right now. Who do we need to be keeping an eye on when we're not talking BYU and Colorado? Well, that Iowa State loss to Kansas opened the door for a lot of teams. Arizona State, one of them, right? They are rolling right now. But they are at Kansas State this week. Then they get BYU at home. The good news, running back Cam Skattebo should be back for this final push. Remember, he missed last game with an undisclosed injury. As for Kansas State and Iowa State, well, it could all come down to Farmageddon. That's going to be an Ames at the end of the season. Whichever team can win out still has a spot if if Colorado were to slip up.
But how about a huge shout out that we need to give to Neil Brown in West Virginia? They also sit at 4-2 in Big 12 play, but because of tiebreakers, they would need to have a lot of help if they wanted to get to Arlington. The winner of the Big 12 title game would be set to punch their ticket to the college football playoffs. As for this week's college football top 25 rankings, we did see some movement there at the top. Last week, we saw BYU sitting at number 9, and now you see they jumped up to number 6. You also take a look at Colorado there at 17, Kansas State still there at 16 as well. Pete, I know you weren't too happy last week with the committee putting the Cougars at number 9, but are you happy with seeing them at number 6?
I am. It looks good for them at 6. With Colorado, I think they could be higher than 17. I look at some of those teams in front of them. I feel like they would beat SMU like a drum, but it is the way it is right now, and we have plenty of time left, right, as we move forward towards the end of the season. But I feel like there's still another round of chaos that will sort things out.
And you've been saying that throughout the season, and you've been really right on that as well. Plenty more to come here on Inside the 12. Can the Kansas Jayhawks make it a second straight upset and knock off undefeated BYU? That matchup and more when we come back. Welcome back to Inside the 12. I'm Madison Hawk. That's Pete Souza. Time now to preview our matchups. There's 6 Big 12 games on the schedule in what is sure to be an action-packed Week 12. 4 teams do get the chance to catch their breath. UCF, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas Tech all on bye weeks. But let's start with previewing Houston traveling to Tucson Friday night to take on Arizona. The Cougars have won 3 of their last 4 games, and bowl eligibility is now on the table.
3 of their last 4. Huge turnaround for Houston. But don't expect Arizona to roll over in this one. Houston's dual-threat quarterback, Zion Chris, well, he is on a heater coming into this one. So Arizona's defense going to have to force turnovers and get an early lead. That will take away his threat as a runner. The idea is to keep him in the pocket and force him to beat them with his arm. For the Wildcats on offense, expect Brett Brennan to use a lot of pre-snap motion to keep Houston's defense honest and make them talk and adjust. When you pair that with some of Arizona's weapons, it could create some problems for Houston.
Moving on, let's take a look at Baylor. They're set to take on West Virginia. These are 2 high-powered offenses looking for their 6th win of the season, but Baylor has never won in Morgantown. How can they do it on Saturday?
Old school football for Dave Aranda. Nobody mixes up defensive coverages like the former LSU defensive coordinator and current defensive mastermind. That could be trouble for West Virginia. The team is still trying to figure out the situation under center. Not sure at this time if Garrett Green will be back from injury. He is practicing this week. Aside from the complicated defensive looks, Baylor's offensive line and running game has been steamrolling opponents. Why? Teams can't stack the box with Sawyer Robertson becoming one of the elite quarterbacks in the Big 12. Linebacker Matt Jones told me just a couple days ago, this team will follow Sawyer Robertson anywhere, and you're seeing it play out on the field.
Yeah, you sure are. And moving on to Arizona State at Kansas State. Last week, in the middle of the game, the injured Cam Scadaboo asked his coach, Kenny Dillingham, if he could go in the game and suit up. Is he going to be able to suit up on Saturday?
That is the question. It looks like it's moving in that direction. He's been practicing this week and has been upgraded from doubtful to questionable. But in the passing game, Arizona State fans can really be excited about Sam Levitt. Levitt did an amazing job last week identifying man-to-man coverage late with the free safety over the top. That's called cover 1. And then he let Jordan Tyson high point the football, bring it down for that game-winning touchdown. It's a great example of the growth the Sun Devils passing game has experienced, which they'll need it to beat Kansas State.
For the Wildcats, how can they rebound from that crushing loss against Houston?
Avery Johnson said this week he wants to continue to work on letting the game come to him. Expect to see him with some short passes and perimeter runs. That will get him into a flow where he's able to stand tall in the pocket when he needs to and make the big throws. On defense, expect the Wildcats to get after Levitt. Kansas State has the 2nd most sacks in the Big 12 right now, so that could really help their effort.
2 other teams looking for a get-right game. Cincinnati is set to take on Iowa State. Both of these teams coming off back-to-back losses, but the Cyclones are still in the title mix. How can they get back in the win column on Saturday?
You know, Matt Campbell has been transparent all season long, talking about the fact that Iowa State is using a lot of young players, especially on defense. So it will be important for Abu Sam and Carson Hansen to get going in the running game, melt the clock a little bit. It's fun to see Rocco Beck putting up huge numbers like he did last week, but when the rush game is working, they win. Modest numbers for Beck, probably better off for the team.
Okay, so to counter that, how can the Bearcats snap their skid on the road?
Well, I feel like they've gotten away a little bit from Xavier Henderson and how he's been playing, his playmaking ability. He's been featured as more of a move the chains guy, and that makes sense. His 6'3" frame lends itself to that, but he needs to be a big play threat if the team is going to win. The last 4 games, he's had no touchdowns and no catches over 15 yards. They need him to be explosive.
Kansas doesn't have the time to savor its win over Iowa State. They are set to hit the road to face undefeated BYU. What are you watching in this one?
Pack those good vibes and take them to Provo with you. Lance Leipold has talked about the feel and the volume just getting turned up around the facility the last couple of weeks, where they've won 2 out of 3 games. Now it's about using that confidence to their advantage and not getting carried away on offense, taking too many chances. The Cougars are second in the nation in interceptions, and they have 11 different players who have picked off passes this season. Leipold himself said that's amazing.
As for BYU, another close call last week. Is this a magical team that's just finding ways to win, or are they showing that they're pretty vulnerable?
It's a song, Do You Believe in Magic?
I like that song.
Yeah, and I think I do.
A young girl's heart.
There you go. That's right. But it's not magic. It's a balanced Cougars attack, and Jake Retzloff is at the head of the snake there. He's quick to run when he needs to. He's not just about throwing, and he doesn't run because he can't throw. That's another way for him to produce. Lance Leipold actually mentioned this week that it's scary when Retzloff leaves the pocket because he turns into a bruiser. The big test for BYU will be up front on defense. Kansas has the second best running attack in the Big 12, and Devin Neal is putting the finishing touches on a historic career. If Neal gets going, we could be in for a nail biter.
This could be a fun game. One thing is for sure, I'm signing us both up for singing lessons really soon. Time for a quick break, but when we come back, can Utah's top-ranked defense put the brakes on Shedeur Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes? We dive in with college football insider Bruce Feldman next on Inside the 12. Welcome back to Inside the 12. I'm Madison Hawk. That is Pete Souza. It is time now to preview our game of the week. It's a special one brought to you by Children's Health, Colorado and Utah. This is going to be a really fun one. We had to bring in the big guns to help us preview this. Athletic writer Bruce Feldman and a special guest from Fox. Fox Big Noon Kickoff will also be in Boulder for this game as well. So Bruce, thanks so much for joining us here on Inside the 12.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to get to Boulder tomorrow, and can't wait to see what happens. Obviously, the Buffs are on quite a roll right now.
Yeah, Bruce, you guys have been all over the Big 12 this year, right? The Big Noon Kickoff show. You guys do such a great job. Going back to Colorado, what's your favorite part about being in Boulder?
Just that there's way different energy. So go back a year, we started our season, kicked off last year in Fort Worth against, TCU, who's coming off playing for the national title. They went in and they stunned everybody, proved a lot of people wrong, upset TCU, got on a pretty good roll, but then all of a sudden it fell apart in the second half of the season. Fast forward to this offseason, I think Deion deserves a ton of credit. He made a really bold hire for his defensive coordinator. Robert Livingston had never been a defensive coordinator anywhere before, but he'd been on the Bengals staff for about a dozen years and worked his way up. And he's been a great addition. The other thing is they've gotten a little better on the offensive line. I think they upgraded not just in the portal, but Jordan Seaton was a top, 5-star offensive line recruit. He's played very well, especially for being such a young guy. And you have a team that's dangerous, and I don't know that they're going to win the Big 12 title, but I think they have a realistic shot to do that, to go back there and see what it looks like now as opposed to when it was just, starting to percolate a little bit. It's very cool.
Colorado definitely has the pieces, that's for sure. But as for Utah's offense, after losing starting quarterback Cam Rising, there's been a lot of question marks around that offense. But the defense has really kept Utah in games and kept games close as well. What is the game plan on the defensive end for Utah and how they can slow down the Buffalo's offense that is really pass happy?
Yeah, I think it's got to be, get after Shedeur, get pressure on him, force some mistakes, get a lot of hits on him. And they can do that. I mean, we saw, they have a great defensive coordinator in Morgan Scalley. They have a really good defensive line who's now gotten healthy. They're good in the front seven. Last week obviously against BYU, they really, really got after Jake Retzloff. And I thought for much of the night, they batted down balls, they got hits on him. I think this is a team that is capable of beating anybody in the Big 12 because they're so good on defense and they're so well coached. This is a game, I know CU's not overlooking it, but they're going to get a lot of pressure on Shedeur. That's going to be a big challenge for the offensive line for Colorado.
Now, I got to ask you about Travis Hunter while I have someone of your ilk here talking with us. They only have Utah's to worry about him on offense, but of course they need to worry about him on defense too. A lot of Heisman talk going on, obviously, around Travis Hunter. You've been doing this for a very long time. Can you put into context just how generational of a talent this guy is?
Yeah, I think generational is a great way to describe him. So there's been other guys who had success as two-way players, but like they weren't playing on offense the amount of snaps are being relied on as Travis Hunter is. He's on the field for the whole day, and to be able to like hit top speed and accelerate and make the game-changing plays he makes. And I also think there's a mental component of it where I don't know how they juggle his reps at practice. He can't be in two places at once when they practice it. So, hats off to him. You're right. He is a legit Heisman candidate, and he's one of the front runners, I think.
Yeah, makes a good point. How do you practice if you're Travis Hunter? If Colorado is going to get the win and keep their college football playoffs hopes alive, big picture, Bruce, what do you think has to happen in their favor on Saturday?
I think they got to do a good job of just protecting Shedeur. He can't take too many hits. I remember last year I was in the studio on Friday night and they played at Washington State, and Washington State got after him and he took a pounding, and they had the backup in there, and it was a disastrous night for them. I think they're much better on the offensive line, and I think they're much better as a team. But again, this is a really good Utah defense that they're going to be playing.
Yeah, and to your point, it's so much easier said than done with keeping Shedeur Sanders uncomfortable. Bruce, thanks so much for joining us. We could have you on for the entire show. Great stuff there. But you can catch Bruce and the rest of the Big Noon crew when Big Noon Kickoff goes live from Boulder this Saturday at 10 a.m. on Fox. Bruce, thanks so much. Enjoy the games this weekend. It's going to be a fun weekend of college football.
It will be. Thank you, guys.
Still more to come on Inside the 12. The voice of the Colorado Buffaloes joins the show to help us pick this week's Big 12 games. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the 12. It's time now for our weekly pick segment where we see who has some bragging rights. And I started off really hot. I guess I'm just not a clutch player down the stretch because 3-3 to your 4-2. Hey, you had a really big week.
Anybody that watched you play hoops at Belmont in college knows you're a clutch player, but your picks leave a little to be desired.
Yeah, I thought I was, but how about the Bear going 4-2 as well? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this week. And joining us to pick the full slate of Big 12 football games this week is the voice of the Buffaloes for the past 21 seasons, college football radio play-by-play announcer Mark Johnson. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, you bet. Good to be on with you. Listen, I relate to you. We do a similar kind of thing in our radio broadcast with Coach Gary Barnett. He's kicking my tail this season. So you brought somebody on that might be at the bottom of the totem pole when it's all said and done here with these picks.
Hey, I love it. At least it's not just me. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, I guess, but I need to be smarter maybe. Let's start with this Friday night. Houston at Arizona, 10:15 Eastern on FS1. Who are you liking in this one, Mark?
Well, this is kind of a tough game right here. Both of these teams obviously have had their issues this season. Now, I've seen Arizona. We obviously saw them against the Buffaloes. Papita's having a great year. McMillan's a phenomenal receiver with 1,000 yards. So being that this one's down in Tucson, I'll go Arizona at home over Houston.
I'm going to take Arizona as well. I like the Wildcats at home.
Arizona. We can all agree with that first pick. Let's move on to Saturday's game, starting with Baylor at West Virginia. This kickoff is at 4 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Who do you like in this one, Baylor or West Virginia?
Well, I've done a number of games over the years in Morgantown. It's one of the great locations to play college football and to witness college football. I like West Virginia's defense in this. Robertson's been very, very good at quarterback, but I don't think he'll be able to move the ball as effectively against the Mountaineers defensively, so I'll go West Virginia at home.
I agree with you, and it's weird. Because the game is starting at 3:30 in the afternoon, I like Baylor. But if it was a night game, I'd take West Virginia. It'd be too scary.
Okay, interesting on the timing of kickoff. West Virginia for me in this one. Let's take a look now at two 7-win teams, Arizona State and Kansas State, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN. Who has the advantage in this one, Mark?
I think this is going to be a heck of a college football game. I mean, Scannabow's been outstanding this season running the football for the Sun Devils. Johnson's been good, getting just about to break 1,000 yards for K-State. And so I've got K-State at home. I think K-State's a very complete football team, and I'll say K-State will win this one at home, but I think it's going to be a heck of a game.
All right, I like Kansas State as well.
Yeah, Kansas State for me. Agree on that one as well. Cincinnati Bearcats versus Iowa State, 8 o'clock Eastern on Fox. Who are you feeling in this one, Cincinnati or Iowa State? This was a hard game to pick for me.
Yeah, I think so. And I was kind of surprised. I went to look at the spread. Right now, Iowa State's a 10-point favorite in this ballgame. I think that's a little bit much. Rocco Becht has been putting up some monster numbers for ISU. And so just the fact that they've lost 2 in a row says to me, being at home, Cyclones are going to win this ball game. But again, I think it's going to be a very good contest.
I like Iowa State at home.
Iowa State for me as well. This is going to be another really fun game. Kansas heads to Provo to face undefeated BYU. Kansas rolling with a lot of momentum right now. We say that they are better than their record indicates. Kickoff for that one, 10:15 Eastern on ESPN. Who do you like in this one?
Well, I'll tell you this. If you don't think Kansas is a good football team, Vegas says this is a 3-point game. BYU's undefeated. Wow. Kansas is a good football team, but I think the Buffs are going to have a heck of a challenge next week when we see them in Arrowhead in Kansas City. But being that they're on the road this week, I'll go with BYU at home. I think that it might be a bigger than a 3-point spread when it's all said and done, but I'll go with the Cougars.
Yeah, I'm going with the Cougars as well.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against undefeated BYU right now. That's my pick as well. Now it is time for our Game of the Week, brought to you by Children's Health. Utah and Colorado facing off. This is going to be a fun one. Kickoff for this one is at noon on Fox. Tell us why you think Colorado is going to win on this one. I'll just set you up like that.
Well, listen, the Buffaloes seem to be a team of destiny right now. With what Prime has done in year number 2, turning this program around from when he took over, being the most irrelevant program in America, to doing what he's doing this season. You've got potentially the Heisman winner in Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, I think I can say this objectively, the best quarterback in America. Utah, I've got phenomenal respect for. But, guys, what they're going through injury-wise is ridiculous. I don't know what Kyle Whittingham did to deserve this, but it's been unbelievable. And so due to all of that, I got Colorado at home over Utah, and with great respect for Utah, because they've been amazing what they've done since they moved out to the Power 5 ranks.
I got the Buffs as well.
Yep, I learned my lesson. I'm not picking against Colorado. Mark, we appreciate you joining us.
Hey, Mark,
here.
I have one question for you. As a guy who's done play-by-play for a while, how do I get my pipes like yours? Is there like a magic juice I can drink?
It is a great voice.
It's the best. He's got the. I've been listening to you for a long time.
Well, I wish I could give you some magic formula. The good Lord blessed me with it. And I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do any of those kind of things. I drink a lot of water. And I went through a second puberty when I was playing college basketball. So that's all I've got for you right there.
Well, I love listening to you. Thank you for joining us.
A lot of water and a lot of hot tea. Mark, thanks so much. Hopefully, maybe we'll see you in Arlington on December 7th.
Yeah.
Best of luck to your Buffaloes this season.
You're very welcome. I look forward to seeing you.
I like how you called out his voice. I have to agree. It's very strong.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Well, that's all the time we have today on Inside the 12. We hope you enjoy what is sure to be another exciting week of Big 12 football. For Pete Souza, I'm Madison Hawk. We'll see you next week.